Hilary DeCesar is an award-winning business expert, author, host of the ReLaunch podcast and Radio America's The ReLaunch Live, and founder of the ReLaunch Company. Hilary has a psychology degree and multiple certifications, and she uses her unique experience and training to empower midlife women to experience joy and reimagine what's possible in their life and their business. And Hilary, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here.
Christy, this is so awesome to be here, and I've been looking forward to this. So hopefully we will over deliver to all of the listeners out there.
I hope so too. I'm sure we will. Now, you've got some really interesting experience through your history here, including a feature on Secret Millionaire, which I'd love to talk about. But before we get to that, can you tell us a bit about how you got to this really interesting intersection of neuropsychology and business and serving women like you do?
Absolutely. So my journey began in the Silicon Valley, and it was during a time where it was all boys club. And I was, literally leaning into everything I possibly could to continue up the ladder. And I was at corporate America, I was at Oracle. And after 10 years of that, I had gotten to a point where I'm like, I want to go out. I have this entrepreneurial desire. You know, I had had really great success in this environment, but it was taking a toll. I was trying to raise 3 kids. I was divorced. I had these, 3 little kids under 7. And I was just like, I felt like I had corporate guilt. I felt like I had this, like, I wasn't doing anything right. Right. I had my relationship was, tanked. My work, I felt, when I was guilty when I was there, I was guilty when I was home. My kids were just like, wanting more and more of my time. And so I decided to venture out and create my very first, if you can believe this, over 20 years ago, I had a consulting company with another gal that we did together. And consulting then is coaching now. So it's funny. I look and I'm like, okay, does that mean I'm like a dinosaur in this world when I say how long I've been doing this? It really triggered. I started doing all of this for so many different other people. I was helping people grow their business, scale their business, sell their business, merge their business. And I thought, I want to do that now for my own. So I went out and I started a company, and it was an internet safety company to keep girls under 13 safe online. It was a tech company, it was security. And I loved it, raising millions and millions of dollars. But yeah, I couldn't give up the coaching. I couldn't give up this, so no matter what I was doing, no matter what company I was working, on and launching and entrepreneurship, I had to continue to coach. And it fueled me when I was going through so many of my own relaunches. And yes, relaunches are happening at a heightened level right now, Christy. I mean, there's not a person I meet that isn't going through either a personal or professional or both relaunch. I call it the great relaunch because it really is. We're all like trying to figure out, like, what are we doing next? Who am I? How am I going to make this work? How am I going to create success? And it was one of these moments where I kept getting additional relaunches. I mean, my mom got cancer. She passed away, suddenly. I took care of her. And then my dog died. Then my dad just passed away. I sold a house after 25 years in it and moved to a different state. And these are all relaunches. And what I had garnered from all of these different experiences and working with the thousands of people I have is that there was a process that really I worked through in my failures and my successes. And I ended up when, COVID was, deep in and my mom had just passed, I couldn't do the eat, pray, love. Couldn't go out there and venture the world. I couldn't go into the wild, put my backpack on and my crappy tennies. I had to figure out what can I do. And so at that point, I decided I need to write a book. And I finished it. It came out a few months ago, and it's called The Relaunch: Spark Your Heart to Ignite Your Life. And so that's my journey. All the relaunches put together, all my clients' relaunches, and giving women a sense that, you know what, the second half this next chapter truly 100% can be your best. It's not just words.
We've always had some kind of relaunch in our lives, but the pace at which it's accelerated over the last few years is absolutely stunning. We were looking for some prospects for one of my other companies and going through LinkedIn, and it struck me probably 80% of the LinkedIn profiles that I saw had been at their position for less than a year. Never seen anything
Yeah,
like
great resignation. And
everybody's moving and changing, and, some of them are starting new companies, some of them are just moving to a new corporate position. Whatever it is, it's a massive change in all areas of these people's lives. It's absolutely amazing. So what timing?
it's really great revelation. It's like realizing, the great realization. It's realizing that what got you where you are now isn't what you want anymore. And it's woken us all up. We now are at this point where how do you do it? How do you take that step? How do you have the confidence? How do you have the ability to say, how am I gonna pay for this next adventure in my life? How do I do this? How do I make sure that it's successful, right? Because a lot of these people that are, it's a crazy statistic, right? But a lot of people haven't ever done, maybe they're starting a new business. And yeah, they've been very successful and they've had, P&Ls and they've, had that success in corporate, but they haven't done the startup. But they know they have that burning, that's why I say spark in the book. It's like spark. You have it. And for so many of us, it was just doled out. And you mentioned, the relaunches that are happening. You've got global relaunches, which are, pandemic, war, financial crisis, political crisis. Then you've got your individual relaunches where like, hey, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What do I want in life? And then relationships, right? And then you've got business relaunches. And so never in our history have we had all three in such uncertain times. And the thing that people, humans, dislike the most is uncertainty.
Mm.
So it's a really, really difficult time for people, but they are opening up their eyes and saying, I don't want the same old. And it's not. We can't have a new normal. We have to have a new different at this point.
Oh, I love that. And I think that's the silver lining really to all of this. I mean, all of the tragedy and all of the uncertainty and the horrible things that have happened over the last few years is that we've all been forced to reexamine what we're doing, what we want to do, and how we move forward with that. And I think that's incredible, that we all have that opportunity and we're really being forced to look at that. So I just absolutely love that. Now you tell us a little bit about this because we've got a lot of things that we want to talk about today, but I want to hear a little bit about Secret Millionaire before we go on, because you had an opportunity, you landed on Secret Millionaire. What was that?
Well, and I'll tell you, a lot of times we as women are not very good at bragging about ourselves. And we were discussing this before. I just got back from a trip and our family went around each night and had, one person got to humble brag, say three things about themselves that they, don't normally share as being proud. And then we all got to say something nice. But it's one of those that I feel super blessed. First off, I don't like the name of, the secret millionaire, but I do love the premise of what I was able to do, and that is go undercover and spend my own money, which is, I was single at the time, and the show acts like they pay all the money and all that, but no, 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 it's actually coming out of your pocket. And I'll never forget my ex-husband saying, "You're gonna give away that much money? Like, what are you thinking? Like, why would you do that? You're a single woman." And I'm like, and I just said, "You know what? This is gratitude. I am so grateful for what I have, and I know when I give it, I'll get it back. I believe in, law of reciprocity." And so I was able to do this show. I was able to give a significant amount of money to 4 different charities, of which I gotta tell you, one became a very dear friend of mine who ended up speaking at my second wedding,
Oh, wow.
which is which is so
But
great.
ironic.
Pretty ironic, right? And my ex-husband was there. He was there. So yeah, it was a great experience, and I think it really impacted me in what I ended up creating for my business Relaunch, which is my company, the Relaunch Co. Because it made me realize how we go through life living the way that we have been brought up. We live other people's stories. We live other people's beliefs. And when I had to pull myself away from my lifestyle, go and spend time with people that didn't have what I had, and I had always been a very generous like contributor with checks. Sure, I'll write you a check. Sure, I'll write you a check. But putting my hands in the dirt or in my situation, it was horse poop, cleaning up a whole bunch of horse poop. It made me really realize that there's so much more to that better version of yourself. I call it your higher self. And when this all came out, I started to realize how in my head I had been. Everything is like, "Oh, how am I gonna be perceived? What is gonna happen with this? What if I make the wrong move?" I was so fear-based, and then I started to really tap into that, and we talked about the why, the why am I here, the what's my purpose, and through all of that, I created the 3HQ, which is getting out of your head into your heart to access your higher self, which, by the way, once you do that, manifestation of your dream relationship, your dream job, your, dream everything ends up actually happening because you're removing the barriers that we allow to stay up. But once you realize, like, holy smokes, that's what's holding me back, it's like the dominoes start to fall.
I love actionable steps as well, which is why I really want to dig into this. And you're a big believer of that turning transition into transformation. What's the saying? When everything changes, change everything. I love that. I really leaned into that one. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that 3HQ method and how we do that. How does that work?
Well, and it's interesting because I love, the change and, when you think about that great quote about, without change, there'd be no butterflies. And you think about like the metamorphosis of like what happens in the cocoon and how they eat them, they eat their bodies and then I really felt like that was me. Like I had to go deep. It was like there were a lot of those, the dark night of the soul and these things. And when you are at a point where and I and you might be, understanding this and with the people you work with, when you start to go down that spiral path where, like, this has happened to me and that's happened to me, and now this is happening to me, and it gets you caught up in almost the what's next, what's around the corner, and these are all those relaunches that are those transitions. And when we can look at it differently with the 3HQ in mind, with the 3HQ process in mind of getting out of your head and the steps to do that, the steps to get rid of your negative thoughts, the steps to understand how your future identity can create, where everything that you want to do in your life. And then you can get into that heart center of your why, of why do you want to start this new business? Why do you want to now take that step and, go for that job that you've never thought you could do at your, corporate? Why do you want to like throw everything away and just start over? It's that it's the heart place, and leadership is starting to realize that it's not about head leadership. It's about heart leadership. And too many people just they're like, it's the IQ of the 50s, 60s, 70s, right? Where IQ was everything. And then the 90s became EQ, emotional quotient. Today's times, it's about 3HQ. You have to be living this from your own perspective, from your own internal perspective, so that then you can incorporate it into your business. And I think that that's why the great relaunch is really happening. And if you're if you're struggling, you're not alone because there's so many relaunches, that are happening. And it's the energy around how you're doing it. It's that how do we take this transition, which could be terrible. I'm not like downplaying. We have like awful, awful, awful. I just lost my dad, not even a month ago. And how do you take something like that and allow for it to transform you into not the sadness, the despair, gosh, I woke up this morning and I even thought like, "Oh my god, I haven't talked to my dad in a while. I need to call him." Like, you
Mhm.
get into those processes, but how do you take it and have a great transformation around it? As you mentioned, the silver lining, my podcast used to be called the Silver Lined Relaunch. Now it's just the Relaunch podcast, which I was laughing when you said that because 'cause I'm like, "Yeah, do you know I have probably done 150 plus episodes, and there have been some of the most incredible relaunches that you could ever imagine. And, we go into some of like life's worst situations health wise, just terrible violence. And I have even a Holocaust survivor. And I would ask, whether on camera or off, I'd say, you could do it again. Would you change anything? And do you know, I have not had one person, and we're talking rape, molestation, death of children, death of siblings, death, I mean, even someone who died on the, ground, zipped up in a body bag, and then it was opened up again. Wait, wait, I'm still here. Not one said that they would go back and change anything.
Mhm.
That's the transition to transformation. We all have it in us, by the way. Some people have grasped it a little sooner, a little earlier than others. But having done this for so long, there are success metrics. There are literally KPIs, key performance indicators to allow you to get there. And it all starts in, one of the questions you said, like this just, like crazy path I've taken, but yet it really now makes so much sense.
Mhm.
It seemed a little bit like, I'm going right, I'm going left, I'm doing all these things, but in reality, I took the psychology and then I became passionate 10 years ago about neuroscience. I studied under some of the absolute best, took out what I love from psychology, took out what I love from neuroscience, and then put together this concept 3HQ. And in the head, I just want to mention one in the head when we are ruminating around the negatives, around that, God, like so much bad stuff is going on right now in the world, in my life, in my business. How do we get from there to success? And one of the things that I go through in the head section is this concept of bugs. Beliefs underground surfacing, beliefs underground surfacing. And these are those limiting beliefs. And too many successful women and women that are trying to reach success think we can power through it. I'm strong enough, or, "Ugh, I can do this. I can do this. I'm willpower, willpower." It never works. And we're talking like, people that have been Iron Man women, I mean, incredible, like, have that, that I can really make it happen. You can't. Your brain is wired a certain way. And in order to change, we have to eliminate. And that takes time. It takes a process. And I call it the belief blaster. And it's a very, it's a 5-step process. And I go through it in the book. But 5-step process that takes you through understanding that we all have limiting beliefs, every single one of us. I've only met one person, one woman, she's the C-suite in one of the largest companies in the world, and she said, "I don't have any limiting beliefs. I've been working on myself forever. I have none." And I said to her, "Well, okay, but the people who work for you do." So we have to learn this concept because we've gotta, first and foremost, make sure that you understand the people, the heart. And so it was funny. Outside of that, we can all take a deep breath and say we're in good company because we all have them. And there is a process that I'm a big believer in. I don't want people to be indebted to me. I don't want people to be like, I gotta keep going back to her. Oh my God. Oh my God. I wanna give you the keys to unlock those doors. You may not like what you see behind the doors, but at least then I can help you with the process to free up that space. So the 3 H's are the head, the heart, and the higher self. And the higher self is that best version of you, the version that we all know is there. It's that, you're connected to energy, you're connected to source, you're connected to something. It doesn't matter religious wise or non-religious or whatever. It's that you know that there's this best version. There's that when you're really tapping in, there's a thing that, we all don't really especially in business as women, we don't really talk about a lot, and that is your intuition.
Mm.
And for so many of us, we push it down, push it down, push it down because in some way it's been viewed as a negative, right? Well, why are you doing that? Well, I just, I feel it or I sense it or I know it. And then, you get that like, you're crazy. Like, but yet there's a lot of validity to it. And the more we can, it's like a muscle, the more that we can build it. I mean, that's incredible because then you can know something, and knowing is in the head, feeling is in that heart, and sensing is in that higher self. So it all works together. It's that ever loop, it's that infinity of understanding. And so I feel like I get on, my mountaintop and I'm like, I am going to help you tap into probably your best business tool you have, your intuition. And let's absolutely, we're talking about like growth, that's growth. When you can start to, go from, yeah, I just had this like, I thought of this person and then they called. Okay, that's a start. That's a start. But now let's build it out. So it's just like, boom, you're spot on when you can build this up and just like build up to 5K, 10K, marathon, whatever, you do the same with intuition. And that part of it is really part of 3HQ with your head, with your heart, and with your higher self. It's all it's something that you can increase at each level. The head meaning you can start to be aware of these things when they happen, like, huh, interesting. Because remember, when you give yourself attention to put it onto your intention, which is, I really want to increase this. I want Hilary said this is like, a powerful tool that I'm not utilizing. How can I start to utilize it? Pay attention to it and give it its credit. And here's the thing for those, because I often get, Hilary, I've tried to use my intuition and it's plain old wrong sometimes. And so now I'm scared. I'm scared to go with it. And what I like to say back to that is maybe it was your interpretation that
Mm.
was actually wrong. And then you start to say, huh. So I take it, and I had a company, I told you that first consulting company was called White Space Inc. INK. And I often talk about, we fill up our whiteboards with so much stuff. And I like to say, with your intuition, let's erase everything. Let's clear the whiteboard, clear the space, and start over. Start from the very beginning. Let's just practice today. Like, huh, did you have anything that came up for you that you had that sense, you had that feeling, you had that knowingness, and then build that out in each of the 3 core H's?
So for anyone that's really going through that transition, which is probably most of the most of the people listening of some kind of transition, in order to change that into transformation and really make the most of all of the opportunities along the way, the key then from if tell me if I'm understanding this correctly, is really to tune into what's happening, to really pay attention, to take stock of it, and then where do you go from there?
So it's interesting because the first step in the belief blaster is also the first step in 3HQ. And
Mhm,
that is step number 1, which is realize. Realize that you're going through something right now.
mhm.
Realize that you're actually in a relaunch, personal, professional, whatever it is, both. And then be willing to understand that there's an awareness of what's really happening, not, and you hear this often, not, to you, but for you.
Mm.
Because if we're not paying attention, I often get people that, are in the relationship side of the house. They're trying to go out there and they're trying to, find someone to be, in their life, the love of their life, and they keep bringing in the wrong one. Or they're trying to build, a business and they can't get past 6 figures or 7 figures or whatever it is. And it's because they have this repeat process. It just keeps happening. Well, that's great. That's awareness. Awareness that something's going on, that we need to stop this recurrence. We need to realize that it's not helping you get to where you want to be going. And so from there, it's a process of releasing the ideals that you're not where you want to be right now, and understand that you are actually right where you should be. But now you have a choice to relaunch into where you want to be going. And that's an amazing, empowering thing. When you realize that you have that choice, right? And that it will involve change. Because if you don't, you're going to be stuck in your comfort zone. And when you're stuck in your comfort zone, you can't get to your G zone. And that G zone is your growth zone, that gratitude zone, your great zone, your growth zone, which is really what we have to do in order to get past the wall of the comfort zone. It's get uncomfortable. And so once you do that, then the next one is I have this great concept I call the relaunch flip. All those negative things you say in your head, all that self sabotage, all those things that you go right to. You go right to the negative, right to the negative. What can you do to relaunch flip it? What would the opposite be? And I'll give you a great example. Can I give you a short story? I just got back from Africa and it was an amazing trip. We took the kids. It was 3 years in the making because COVID and all that. And we got into a very bad boat accident. And it could have been a head on, and at the last second, the guy turned the boat just by even an inch, and it was a side impact instead of the head on. And afterwards, I mean, all I could do was go to that place of what happened, what would have happened if we're in the middle of like, oh my God, I can't even tell you we were in the middle of like, it was crazy, crazy middle of like nowhere. And as I started to do this, what happened if that boat, came up and over and took out every single one of my family members? What happened if I caught myself and I'm like, wait a second. Okay, we're okay. Bruised, little rattled, but we're okay. And then this is the greatest part. The guide says, my daughter said, well, oh my God, that could have been so bad. We could have all been killed right now. And the guy said, but we weren't, and we're fine. And why put all these hypothetical scenarios out there and start thinking about all that when it didn't happen? It wasn't our time. This was an accident. And then the greatest part, Christy, was he said, so this afternoon, are we going to do a boat ride or are we going to do a truck, a car thing? And I'm thinking, I'm not sure we're doing anything. And my son immediately said, I'll do either. And my daughters are like, I'm not getting back on the boat. But it was this great relaunch flip that occurred. It was so powerful, and it just reiterated that we have that tendency to continue to think of the worst, think of the worst, think of the worst. But what if you didn't? What if you stopped doing that and you started to think about, well, wait a second, maybe maybe it did happen. You got divorced. You lost your business, all these things. Maybe that did happen, but it's in the past. You're not going to be able to change that. So, what can we do starting now going forward? And that's when the very last step of the belief blaster is retrain your brain. Because at that point, you can't, through willpower, just assume you're going to be able to do it. There's actually you have to go through the dissolving of the neural pathway, and that takes time. And so again, it's realize, awareness, you've got release, you've got the relaunch flip, and then you've got retrain your brain. And I've had people say it's like magic.
Mm.
And when you think about magic, you think about, the illusion. And the greatest part about the belief blaster is that it's not an illusion. It actually is something that you will then see in your life as you start to really get clear on what you really want to manifest. It's pretty powerful.
And that's such a key, isn't it? That we think if we do the work and we figure out what our limiting beliefs are, that that's the end of the work. But until you get rid of them, it's not done. And I really love that, the flipping the script, flipping the launch, the relaunch is not only getting yourself out of that negative headspace where it's what if, and I think we all do that. I mean, if I had a nickel for every imagined conversation or scenario in my head, I'd retire next week. But to also look at the opportunities that opened up, right? I mean, that accident on the boat, maybe nobody wanted to go on a boat again and you did something else and it was fantastic. And you might not have done that because you would have still been on the boat, or, the divorce and what opportunity did that open up? Now you have all sorts of different things in your life that you wouldn't have had before because you wouldn't have had those specific opportunities. I think it's such a great change is just such a great opportunity to improve everything in your life.
Brilliant way to say it.
Couple of things that before we go. Well, first of all, I always like to ask this. So I'm going to ask you this before we get into the book and the programs that you've got coming up. What is your best piece of advice for newer women founders, for newer women entrepreneurs that are just getting started in the first few years of their journey?
I would say number one, all you have to think about is one word: clarity. People don't understand that when you're not clear of what you're really trying to do, then everything will bring you closer to that unclear type, right? I mean, it will just everything. And here's the greatest part. I will start talking to somebody and I'll ask, tell me your vision, right? Tell me your vision. Vision, mission. Vision is in the future. Mission is how you're going to operate on a daily basis. And I'll say, what's the vision? And I take them through something called the why wizard. And the why wizard is, well, this is what I'm trying to do. Why? Well, this is da 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 da. Why? Why? And eventually you get to your vision.
So get clear.
If you don't, you'll end up spending a ton of money and a lot of your time wasted. And I believe being in the mid zone and the midlife, why waste time? Set up the right foundation from the very beginning. Learn the business steps that you absolutely need to know. So if you're coming from corporate and you're starting an entrepreneurship, get with people that actually have done this. If you are, trying to make something happen and you're wanting it to happen in like a year, 2 years, 3 years, then chop. We got to make sure that we're not making all the mistakes, right?
And really design it with the end in mind too. This is something I go on and on about quite a bit as well. Is we and I've done it. We tend to think that as long as our business is successful, everything else will be fine. It doesn't matter that it doesn't really suit our lifestyle. It doesn't really, matter that it's maybe not something we're passionate about. As long as it's successful, then everything else will work itself out. But you're building this business and this life from scratch. So, design it the way you want it to be, design it with that end in mind.
100%. And I'll give you a great example of that. That when I put out what I wanted to do, put out there to the universe what I really wanted to create with the Relaunch Co., I knew I absolutely get fueled by travel. And I want to travel once a quarter. I want to travel for a couple of weeks. I want to go places and do things. And I made sure that I was building a business that can sustain that. And you know what? I'm headed off to Europe next quarter, and I've got, Japan in the spring. And that's the thing. When you put it out there and I'm so clear about what I want to do and I'm so clear about the impact I want to make helping women relaunch, it it's by design.
Mhm.
And I literally design it. And then I always talk and one of my other steps that I talk about is rebranding. It's rebranding. When we talk about rebranding your business and we talk about, branding, but let's rebrand your life, starting with you. Like, is this really representing your brand, you of where you are or no? Are you like so scattered and I'm not sleeping and I've got so much stuff going on in my head and I'm not making the money that I always thought I would. I'm not in the relationship I always thought I would. I'm not where living in the place. And it's like, okay, but now it's time to make that happen. Now it's time to literally relaunch, rebrand, and redesign what's going to light you up, what's going to spark you, what's going to make you feel like I'm on absolutely my path, not somebody else's path. And I always am like, oh, well, they're doing this, they're doing that. Well, would you really want to be doing that? Like, is that what you want to be doing? Yeah, she's, senior executive, blah, 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 and she's traveling, 3 out of 4 weeks. Is that what you want? Well, no, well, great. But what? Why wizard? Let's start making it happen.
That's a great way to tackle that comparison monster, that comparison trap that we land. Do you really want to be doing that thing and living that life? No, that's not. You like some
And
components
if it
of it,
is,
maybe.
and if it's yes, great, let's make it happen.
Right.
Well, great. All right. But prove to me that that's really what you want.
Yeah.
So I have one last quick little story. So I was working with somebody and they wanted to sell their business and, they were like, "Oh, and then I'm gonna, get a boat and not a boat, like, a fancy boat and travel around the world and go to all these places I've always wanted to visit." And I said, "Oh, wow, that's really great. You love sailing and you love being on the water." And it was a pause. I'm like, uh, actually, no. I don't like, the sun. It really, I'm fair. And I'm like, huh, where'd this come from? Like, where did this vision? And it ended up, it was when they were young. It was a friend of their parents and sounded all really great. And so that was the focus. And we just kind of went, boop, 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 boop. We broke that one apart. And I said, all right, so now that that's gone, now that we don't want to get on the water, what do you really want?
Yeah.
And I'd like to say, I think it was about 8 months later that everything and I've had people that have worked with me that literally we have written down sentences that they've wanted to hear from their boss, from their, different people. This is what I want said to me. And those exact word for word were said. I mean, there's such power here. I wish we had like, half day to go into this because it's really it's incredible. And I'm living proof. When I graduated from college, I started with nothing and built it up and survived, even had melanoma, survived cancer, survived all these different things. And I'm here to say, second marriage, amazing business, amazing lifestyle. And what am I operating under? I'm operating under 3HQ. That's what I live by.
Yeah. And so needed right now. So tell us about the book and tell us about the programs that you've got coming up as well.
So the book, as I said, just launched, and you can go to the relaunch co.com, and there we have free workshops around 3HQ. Highly suggest, I think the workshop's like an hour. Highly suggest everyone, check that out. You can go to Amazon, get the book. And there are, like I said, my attitude was, I'm not holding anything back. Who knows if I'll ever write another book, right? This is my this is my swan song or not, but I'm like, I'm just gonna give it out there. I'm gonna share it with the world so that you don't need me, although I love to further advance you, but you can get, so much of what I said just from the book Relaunch, and it spark your heart to ignite your life. And here's the thing, we all deserve to have that spark again. And so many of us, just burned out. And that's no way to live a life. That's not what life is all about. So it is it is time. Everyone's relaunching and it's a great community of people that we've created and brought together to support each other. My God, I've never seen such camaraderie and such support and lack of competition. That's the greatest. I have people, coaches that are literally doing the same type of coaching. I have people in the same types of businesses, and they are, you know, just supporting the other person because there's going to be the people that are really attracted to me. There's gonna be people that are attracted to you. There's attracted to others. There's 7+ billion people in the world, right?
Yeah.
There is no competition except the competition that you put out there.
So jump on Amazon and check out ReLaunch and order your copy. And then we will put the link for Hilary's website on our show notes. So if you're on a platform that has show notes, you'll see it right there. If you're on a platform where you can't see the show notes, we are also going to have all of that information on our podcast website, which is onestepempire.com. So you can just go to onestepempire.com and the show and the links and all of those good things will be there. And I'm guessing you'll probably want to re-listen to at least parts of this podcast to make some notes because there's so much gold in this today from Hilary. So I just want to say thank you. What a timely topic. And I really appreciate you being here. I think this episode is going to be a huge help to so many listeners. So thank you, Hilary.
Thank you so much.